Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through stacks of information and pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge just for you. Today, we're doing something a bit different. Think of it as a special bulletin, a rapid-fire deep dive into some major headlines coming out of India right now. Our goal is simple: get you quickly up to speed on a really diverse range of topics. We'll highlight some surprising facts and try to connect the dots between news items that might seem, well, totally unrelated at first glance. We'll be covering quite a bit, everything from agricultural safety, cricket strategy, big political moves, economic changes, new infrastructure, tech advancements, geopolitics, and even some public health innovations. It's quite a snapshot.
Yeah, it really is. And what's fascinating, I think, is how when you look at these headlines together, they paint this incredibly vivid picture of a nation really in motion. We're going to stick strictly to the facts today, explore not just what's happening, but also dig into the context, the implications, the things that make these stories really resonate. The aim is to help you understand why these things matter, not just inside India, but potentially for the rest of the world, too. It's your fast track to being really well informed on India today.
Sounds like exactly what we need. Okay, let's kick off our deep dive with something really critical for India's agricultural sector: a government investigation into widespread crop damage. And this sounds pretty serious, especially for Madhya Pradesh, which is the country's biggest soybean producer. So the government's launched an urgent investigation. Reports of herbicide-induced toxicity in soybean fields. That sounds bad. The Union Agriculture Minister, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, announced that, yes, extensive toxicity has been seen across multiple regions. And because of this, the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, that's ICAR, they've sent out a 4-member expert team straight away for field assessment.
Right. And this immediately brings up a crucial question, doesn't it? Why now? What are the sort of deeper systemic issues going on here? Like, farmers often use herbicides. It's a way to cut down on labor costs, which is a huge factor for them, economically speaking. But the risks, well, they're significant, especially with improper use, or maybe even worse, using substandard chemicals. This affects the crops, obviously, but also, and this is worrying, human health, too.
Human health implications.
Exactly. And what's particularly concerning, and something activist groups have been pointing to for a while now, is this underlying issue of illegal cultivation. Specifically, genetically modified, or GM, herbicide-tolerant soybeans. If these unauthorized crops are out there and potentially widespread, they could be making this toxicity problem much, much worse.
So it's not just about approved chemicals being used incorrectly, but potentially an interaction with crops that technically shouldn't even be in the fields. That complicates things significantly.
Precisely. It adds a whole other layer. And you have groups like the Coalition for a GM-Free India and also the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, the BKS, which is linked to the RSS. They've flagged instances of this illegal GM soybean cultivation before in places like Gujarat. So this isn't necessarily a brand new problem cropping up overnight. It feels more like a persistent challenge bubbling up again.
Okay, so there's a history here. What about accountability? Is anyone being held responsible?
Well, the minister was very clear on this point. He stated that pesticide companies found responsible for the contamination will face consequences, serious ones. Now, the common legitimate herbicides used for soybeans include things like pendimethalin, imidazopyr, chloromuron, ethyl. These are powerful chemicals. The danger isn't just using them, but using them wrong, or maybe using fake versions, spurious products. That's a huge issue.
Spurious products. How big of an issue are we talking about?
It's massive. Some studies suggest that fake agricultural inputs, pesticides, fertilizers, you name it, could account for up to, wait for it, 40% of total sales by value in India.
40%. That's staggering. That must absolutely devastate farmers who think they're buying the real thing.
It's incredibly damaging. These fake products, they might not work, or worse, they could contain harmful stuff. And the estimates suggest this could be cutting India's agricultural output by over 10 million tons a year.
Wow. 10 million tons. That's a direct hit to food supply and farmer incomes.
Absolutely. And it explains the urgency we're hearing about from the government. Reportedly, the Modi government is planning stricter laws specifically to tackle these counterfeit products. This isn't new either. A FICCI study back in 2015 showed the market for these illegal pesticides was growing at nearly 20% per year. It's an escalating crisis.
So this investigation by ICAR isn't just about this one incident. It touches on much bigger themes.
Exactly. Broader concerns about agricultural safety overall, about whether regulations are actually being enforced effectively, and this whole unchecked spread of GM crops, often illegally. So what ICAR finds could really shape future policy on pesticide rules, GM crop oversight, maybe much stricter controls are coming. You know, this agricultural deep dive, it really connects to basic economic health, public health, environmental worries. And it sets the stage for other shifts we're seeing across India, even in completely different arenas like sports strategy.
Right, a perfect transition. From the fields to the cricket pitch. India's focus also turns to, well, strategic moves in sports. And the squad for the Asia Cup 2025 is seeing some pretty notable changes. The big headline seems to be Shubman Gill's exclusion. This is despite a really impressive 754-run performance in the Tendulkar-Anderson Trophy. That's raised a few eyebrows.
It certainly has.
According to reports, CricBuzz specifically, the selectors seem to be favoring a different opening pair, Sanju Samson and Abhishek Sharma. They're citing their consistent results, specifically in recent T20 internationals.
And this is where it gets really interesting, strategically speaking. This selection points to a very clear shift. They're prioritizing dynamic, informed players based on recent T20 performance. Longer format achievements, like Gill's brilliant run in the domestic trophy, seem less weighted right now. His omission really underscores this laser focus on current T20 form and perhaps immediate team synergy for this specific tournament.
So it's less about overall talent and more about who's hot right now in this particular format.
That seems to be the underlying message, yes. It's prioritizing performance indicators tailored for the P20 format's demands, rapid pace, high pressure, you could call it a calculated gamble, perhaps. Prioritizing immediate impact for the Asia Cup, potentially over nurturing multi-format consistency.
Okay, that makes sense strategically, even if it's tough on Gill. What about the bowling? A strong attack is crucial in T20.
Absolutely. And there are significant moves there, too. The big news is Jasprit Bumrah's return. He's confirmed to lead the pace attack, which is a massive boost in terms of skill and experience for a big tournament like this.
It's a huge boost.
Alongside Bumrah, Arshdeep Singh looks set to keep his place. He's done well recently. And they're considering Prasidh Krishna and Harshit Rana for more pace options, bringing in some different skills, maybe some fresh energy. Interestingly, Mohammad Siraj, who's been a key bowler, is expected to miss out. The thinking seems to be primarily because Bumrah is back, and they want to structure the attack around him, maybe managing workload too.
Right, optimizing around Bumrah's return. And the middle order, the engine room in T20. And all-rounders for balance.
Yeah, looking solid there. Tilak Varma, Suryakumar Yadav, Rinku Singh, they're expected to feature prominently. That's a mix of power hitting and stability. For all-rounders, Shivam Dubey and Washington Sundar are reportedly under serious consideration. That adds depth, flexibility in batting and bowling. And Hardik Pandya, a key figure, is expected to keep his spot, reinforcing that crucial balance you need in T20.
So it sounds like a deliberate blend then. Youthful energy like Abhishek Sharma and Jaiswal maybe as the third opener, anchored by experienced players like Bumrah and Pandya.
That's exactly the picture emerging. Bumrah anchoring the bowling, these emerging talents energizing the top order. The final pieces will fall into place after the selection meeting on September 19th. You know, fringe players, any last-minute injury concerns. But ultimately, India's Asia Cup campaign really rests on how quickly this refreshed lineup clicks and performs under pressure, especially with those big matches like against Pakistan always looming. You know, the kind of strategic thinking behind these selections, it actually mirrors, in a way, the moves we're seeing in India's political landscape.
Yeah.
Alliances, leadership positions, they're very much in focus there, too.
Good point. Let's pivot from the cricket field to the political arena now. We've got significant news concerning a major constitutional office. The National Democratic Alliance, the NDA, the ruling coalition, they've officially announced their choice for vice president. They've nominated CP Radhakrishnan. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi quickly endorsed him publicly.
Yes, the PM offered congratulations, praising Radhakrishnan's long public service. He highlighted humility, intellect, dedication to marginalized communities, emphasizing his consistent focus on community welfare. Standard but important political praise for your chosen candidate.
Right. So what's the strategy here? Why a Radhakrishnan, and how does this nomination fit into the bigger political picture for the NDA?
Well, part of the strategy seems to be building consensus, or at least projecting the effort to build it. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh and Parliamentary Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju have been tasked with reaching out to opposition parties. That includes the NDA alliance. The aim is to foster cooperation, maybe get some cross-party support. It's a standard political play, but it can help smooth the process and potentially deter the opposition from putting up a strong fight if they feel isolated.
So they're not just banking on their numbers, they're actively trying to broaden the support base. What about their internal process and the election timeline?
Internally, the NDA Parliamentary Party has a meeting scheduled for Tuesday to formally approve the nomination. That shores up their own ranks. The election process itself is moving ahead. There are training sessions for MPs on voting procedures from September 6th to 8th, and the actual vote is set for September 9th. The NDA seems very confident they'll win, given their strength in Parliament. And interestingly, as of now, the opposition hasn't announced a candidate.
No opposition candidate yet. That certainly makes the NDA's path smoother.
It does. It leaves the race uncontested for now. So this nomination, combined with their quick mobilization, it really shows the NDA's intent to maintain control over key constitutional roles. Radhakrishnan's nomination is seen by many as reinforcing the NDA's message of inclusive governance, experienced leadership, aligning with their broader political narrative, especially with national elections potentially on the horizon. The outcome here isn't just about who becomes vice president, it's also a signal, a kind of barometer of the political dynamics between the ruling coalition and the opposition. All eyes will be on whether the NDA alliance does field a challenger and how MPs react to the NDA's outreach.
Okay, so while the ruling party is projecting strength and confidence in securing these key posts, the opposition is simultaneously raising some very loud alarm bells about, well, the health of India's democracy itself, especially around election integrity. This brings us to some strong words from Congress President Mallikarjun Kharge. He gave a pretty forceful speech in Sasaram, Bihar. He accused the BJP-led central government of undermining democratic institutions and even threatening the Constitution. Strong claims.
Very strong claims. And Kharge's speech wasn't just rhetoric. He laid out specific, quite serious allegations. He alleged, for instance, that the Election Commission, which is meant to be independent, has effectively become an agent of the Prime Minister's administration.
An agent? That's a fundamental challenge to the EC's neutrality.
Huh.
What evidence or examples did he cite?
He pointed to what he called irregularities and how voter lists are being revised, suggesting biased practices. He specifically referenced earlier remarks by Rahul Gandhi about an astonishing 10 million new voters allegedly added in Maharashtra between the general election and the state election, seemingly all favoring the BJP coalition. Kharge expressed worry about similar things happening in Bihar, pointing to the ongoing Special Intensive Revision, SIR, of electoral rolls there ahead of their state elections, suggesting a pattern, essentially.
Those are incredibly serious allegations about the electoral process itself.
Mm-hmm.
Did he mention other institutions or government actions?
Yes. He heavily criticized the government's decision to put a union minister on the committee that selects election commissioners. He argued this bypasses a Supreme Court recommendation to include the Chief Justice of India, thereby, in his view, compromising the selection panel's independence right from the start. And then, shifting gears slightly, but still aiming at the government's narrative, he directly rebutted the Prime Minister's recent praise for the RSS during his Independence Day speech.
The RSS. What was his critique there?
Kharge made the controversial claim that the RSS actually collaborated with the British during the colonial era and betrayed freedom fighters. He accused RSS volunteers of informing on revolutionaries and seeking pardons from the British. This directly challenges the narrative often presented by the BJP and Modi about the RSS's role in India's independence struggle. It's a historical argument with clear, present-day political intent.
So hitting them on current practices and historical legitimacy, what was the context for this speech? Was it part of a larger campaign?
Yes, very much so. It was part of the Congress Party's broader push, highlighted by the launch of the Voter Adhikar Yatra, the Voter Rights March, led by Rahul Gandhi. That campaign is all about mobilizing public awareness around election integrity and constitutional rights. So Kharge's remarks really reflect these deepening tensions between the opposition and the ruling party. Congress is positioning itself as the defender of democratic norms. His statements highlight these growing concerns shared by many in the opposition about institutional erosion, potential voter disenfranchisement, the politicization of constitutional bodies. They aim to rally support by challenging the legitimacy of the current electoral setup.
Okay, so these deep political divides and accusations are swirling. How does this potentially impact, or how is it reflected in India's economic landscape, especially with the government trying to manage tax reforms and meet fiscal targets?
That's the million-dollar or maybe trillion rupee question, isn't it? Let's pivot to the economy. Despite announcing some pretty significant tax cuts recently, the government is projecting a lot of confidence about hitting its fiscal targets. It's a bold strategy. They're sticking to the fiscal deficit target of 4.4% for this financial year, even after these cuts to consumption taxes.
And these weren't minor cuts, right? PM Modi unveiled a major overhaul of the Goods and Services Tax GST, the biggest reform since it started in 2017. The aim is making daily essentials, electronics, things like that, more affordable.
Exactly. It's a significant move, clearly designed to ease the burden on consumers, but it's a balancing act, absolutely. These cuts will reduce government revenue, at least initially. But government officials are asserting that both the central government and the states have ways to offset the shortfall. A senior source mentioned they have options, though they didn't spell out exactly what those are.
Okay, so they have a plan B, or maybe plans B, C, and D, even if they're not public yet. Do we know any specifics about how they might offset the revenue loss?
One specific measure we do know about is ending the GST compensation cess by December. That cess was put in place originally to compensate states for revenue they lost when GST was first introduced. Ending it means that particular revenue stream stops, but it also potentially signals a shift states might need to rely more on their own revenue generation going forward.
Right, a shift in the center-state financial dynamic.
Yeah.
What's the bigger picture thinking behind these tax cuts now?
Well, the finance ministry hasn't commented officially on the balancing act itself, but the government's confidence suggests they believe their fiscal management is strong enough to handle it. Strategically, these reforms are definitely part of a plan to stimulate consumer spending, which helps growth, and also to ease inflation, which is a major concern for people. Doing this ahead of elections is, politically speaking, quite logical.
Makes sense politically. But are there risks? What are critics saying?
The main warning from critics is that these cuts could strain public finances, especially if economic growth doesn't meet expectations or if finding those offsetting revenues proves harder than anticipated. But the government seems committed. They want to maintain fiscal discipline while pursuing these popular, potentially growth-boosting reforms. As I mentioned, ending the compensation cess changes the center-state equation a bit. And all this is happening against a backdrop of global economic challenges, trade issues, inflation elsewhere. So this balancing act, fiscal prudence versus electoral appeal and growth stimulus, it's going to be watched very closely by investors, by rating agencies. India's ability to hit that deficit target without hurting growth or stability is key for policy credibility right now. And, this economic confidence, this push for growth, it isn't just on paper. It's visible in massive infrastructure projects that are literally changing the landscape.
Absolutely. Let's talk about those tangible signs of development. PM Modi recently inaugurated some major infrastructure projects focused on the National Capital Region. Two big highway projects in Delhi, the Dwarka Expressway and the Urban Extension Road 2, or UAR2. Together, they're valued at a huge €11,000 crore. That's a lot of investment. And Modi himself called it a development revolution for Delhi, emphasizing the impact on the whole NCR, including Gurugram.
The scale of investment is truly significant. It points to a very long-term vision for urban infrastructure. The Prime Minister made a point of highlighting that the national infrastructure budget has actually increased sixfold in the last 11 years. That's an incredible ramp-up in spending.
Just sixfold, wow.
Yeah, enabling record road construction across the country. He stressed how these new Delhi highways will dramatically improve connectivity, cut down congestion, things that really affect millions of people's daily lives in the NCR, saving time, reducing hassle.
Definitely tangible benefits. Was there anything particularly innovative about these projects beyond just building more roads?
Yes, actually. A really interesting feature of the Urban Extension Road is its environmental angle. Apparently, lakhs of tons of garbage were repurposed and used in its construction. So it's helping tackle Delhi's massive waste problem while building essential infrastructure. Modi framed this as a model of sustainable development, urban planning meeting ecological responsibility. Pretty smart.
That is smart. Using waste like that is quite innovative.
He also talked about Delhi's symbolic role as India's global showcase, saying its infrastructure needs to reflect the country's aspirations. Look, these projects aren't just standalone highways. They're part of this broader national strategy. Modernize cities, boost the economy through better logistics and mobility. The timing of the inauguration, the messaging, it clearly aligns with the government's vision for integrated urban development, setting Delhi as a benchmark. And of course, it's a strong political statement about delivering tangible progress, especially with elections in mind. The expectation is clear. Ease traffic jams, cut travel times, support regional development. As Delhi aims to become more connected and cleaner, it signals this shift towards smarter, sustainable urban planning. It's a milestone. And this drive for development, for building things, it's not just roads, it extends to attracting global manufacturing too. Which brings us neatly to a major tech investment story.
Right, from roads to high-tech manufacturing. India's push to become a global manufacturing hub is really exemplified by this next piece of news. Foxconn, the giant Taiwanese electronics manufacturer, has officially started operations at its new facility near Bengaluru in Devanahalli. This is a big deal for Apple's production footprint in India. This plant is said to be Foxconn's second largest globally outside of China. They've started small-scale production of the iPhone 17, adding to what they already do in Chennai. And the investment is huge, $2.8 billion, or about 25,000 crore.
It's a massive strategic move, absolutely. It firmly positions India as a really crucial part of Apple's strategy to diversify its manufacturing away from that heavy reliance on China. Now, it wasn't completely smooth sailing at the start. There was apparently a brief disruption when hundreds of Chinese engineers suddenly went back home.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but Foxconn seems to have handled it quickly. They brought in experts from Taiwan and other places to fill the gap, showing their commitment to keeping the Indian operation on track. It just highlights the complexities involved in these huge global shifts. And Apple's plans for India are ambitious. They're apparently looking to ramp up production to maybe 60 million iPhones in 2025. That's a big jump from the 35-40 million estimated for the 2024-25 period. It signals serious growth intent.
60 million iPhones just from India in 2025. That really underscores India's growing importance in their global supply chain.
It really does. The numbers show it. In the fiscal year ending March 2025, Apple assembled 60% more iPhones in India than the year before, valued around $22 billion. And maybe the most telling detail, Apple CEO Tim Cook apparently confirmed that most iPhones sold in the U.S. during June 2025 were actually made in India.
Wow. Most iPhones sold in the U.S. coming from India. That's a fundamental shift.
It really is. And the market data backs it up. Exports from India hit 3.1 million units in March alone. Domestically, shipments within India were up over 21% in the first half of 2025, reaching almost 6 million units. The iPhone 16 was the top seller in India during that time. Apple's overall market share in India's smartphone sector grew to 7.5% in Q2 2025. Still behind leader Vivo at 19%, but growing steadily.
So it's boosting exports and fueling domestic growth and consumption within India.
Exactly. This Foxconn plant in Bengaluru is set to significantly boost Apple's production capacity, reduce that China dependency, and meet rising demand both globally and within India itself. It fits perfectly with India's broader Make in India push, aiming to become a global electronics manufacturing hub, helped along by government policies like the production-linked incentive schemes. You know, this global shift in manufacturing is really part of a much larger geopolitical recalibration, and India is right in the middle of it, navigating some complex international trade relations, especially with various pressures coming from different directions.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that geopolitical angle now. India is clearly navigating a very tricky global landscape, and there are strategic trade discussions happening that really signal its evolving diplomatic and economic stance. Specifically, India is getting ready to discuss a rupee-denominated trade mechanism with Russia. This is happening during an upcoming high-level visit to Moscow. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is leading the delegation, and significantly, he's being accompanied by people from the Commerce Ministry. That highlights the economic focus.
Right. The main goal here is pretty straightforward. Find ways to boost trade between India and Russia using the Indian rupee. It's a strategic move. The idea is to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar, which often gets caught up in geopolitics, and also to lessen the impact of Western sanctions imposed on Russia. And this push gains, well, extra urgency because of increasing pressure from the U.S.
Pressure from the U.S. In what way?
Well, the U.S. has already put a 25% tariff on some Indian goods, and there's talk of more penalties potentially coming. President Trump explicitly linked these measures to India buying Russian crude oil. He also criticized the BRICS group, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, calling it anti-American. So there's direct pressure there.
Okay, so India is trying to create alternative trade routes or mechanisms while facing pushback from the U.S. It really is a balancing act. How are things with China on the trade front? That's always a complex relationship.
It is complex, but interestingly, trade relations with China seem to be evolving somewhat positively, at least on the numbers front, providing a bit of a counter-narrative. Between April and July 2025, India's exports to China actually rose significantly to $5.76 billion from $4.8 billion the year before. That makes China India's fourth largest export market now.
A noticeable increase.
Yes. And July exports alone were up too. Imports from China also surged quite a bit, hitting over $40 billion in that same April-July period, up from about $36 billion the previous year. So two-way trade is definitely robust, despite other tensions. And on a practical level, officials are apparently working with Chinese authorities to ensure stable supplies of things like rare earth magnets crucial for electronics and defense. Plus, visa approvals for Indian companies wanting to operate in China have reportedly resumed after some earlier discussions, suggesting some level of practical cooperation is happening.
So pragmatic economic engagement seems to be happening alongside the geopolitical maneuvering. What about India's broader diplomatic posture?
India is definitely recalibrating its approach within groups like BRICS, given all these shifting dynamics. PM Modi is expected at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization SCO summit in China soon, from August 31st to September 1st. That's a major regional forum. And the Chinese Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, is visiting India on August 18th. So these high-level meetings are continuing, keeping dialogue channels open. Taken together, all these moves, the Russia talks, the China trade figures, the SEO participation, they reflect India's strategy. Diversify trade, assert some currency independence, navigate these global pressures carefully, all while trying to keep the economy growing and maintain diplomatic balance. It's a complex dance. And while India is busy asserting itself globally, it's also making some really crucial advances closer to home, on a vital public health front safeguarding against emerging disease threats.
All right, let's turn to that final headline. A significant step forward in public health, but also in animal welfare, showcasing a proactive approach to future health challenges. The Nehru Zoological Park, NZP, in Hyderabad is setting up India's first Biosafety Level 3, or BSL-3, lab dedicated specifically to detecting zoonotic diseases in animals.
This is a really big deal. This advanced facility will allow for real-time testing, close monitoring of animal health within the zoo, and that's absolutely critical for preventing diseases jumping from animals to humans, zoonotic transmission, especially in places like zoos where people and animals are in relatively close proximity. Just for context, BSL-3 labs are specifically designed to safely handle pathogens that can cause serious, potentially lethal diseases. Things like certain bird flus, maybe coronaviruses, Nipah virus, agents that pose a significant risk.
So this gives them the capability to handle much riskier pathogens safely on site. What will this allow the zoo to do day to day?
Once it's up and running, the lab means NZP can conduct daily screenings of its animals, manage any viral outbreaks much more quickly and effectively, and implement proper long-term disease control strategies. It shifts them from being reactive to proactive.
And what prompted this? Was it a specific event?
It was directly prompted by the lessons learned during the COVID-19 pandemic. That really hammered home the risks of zoonotic diseases originating in animals. It created a real sense of urgency globally. Right now, NZP uses its own basic lab for initial checks, but often has to send samples out to external institutes for more complex testing. And that takes time, usually 2 to 3 days, to get results back.
2 to 3 days sounds like a long time if you suspect a dangerous outbreak.
Exactly. The new BSL-3 lab will slash that turnaround time to just a few hours. That immediate diagnostic capability is a game changer for quickly containing a potential outbreak, stopping it from spreading perhaps beyond the zoo walls. It's huge for public health security.
A few hours versus a few days, massive difference. What are the next steps for this project?
The zoo is currently putting together the formal proposal to get approval from the central government. That's the key hurdle. Once approved, it'll be launched as a Government of India initiative, which shows its national importance. The zoo director, Sunil S. Hiremath, says they have the qualified staff ready and plan to work closely with local veterinary institutions to run the lab effectively and contribute to research too. This really positions NZP as a pioneer in India for this kind of biosafety infrastructure for wildlife health. It reflects that broader push to integrate science and public health safeguards, especially in urban zoo settings. If it gets the green light, this lab will significantly boost India's preparedness against future zoonotic threats and cements Hyderabad's role as a center for veterinary innovation. It's a major milestone in modernizing animal health surveillance and making those human-animal interactions in public spaces safer.
So after covering all that ground, what does this all mean for you listening in? We've really journeyed through an incredible range of topics today, haven't we? From crop safety issues and cricket team strategies to complex political moves, bold economic reforms, huge infrastructure projects reshaping cities, and even this groundbreaking public health lab. Each headline, though it might seem separate, really gives us a window into the incredibly complex, dynamic situation in India right now. Its challenges, its ambitions, its changing role in the world.
Yeah, and looking at it all together, it really prompts a question, doesn't it? What's the thread that connects all these diverse updates? I think it's this continuous, almost relentless drive for development and adaptation. You see it everywhere, whether it's India navigating tricky global pressures, embracing new technologies in manufacturing, or strengthening its defenses against disease. There's this constant push forward. Understanding these individual pieces from that local farm crisis right up to global trade talks, it paints this powerful global picture. A nation grappling with huge internal challenges while simultaneously and very actively asserting its place on the world stage. Think about how these ongoing shifts, the ones we talked about today, how they'll continue to impact not just India itself, but global dynamics, trade flows, maybe even how we all approach public health in the years ahead. What really stands out to you in this incredibly complex, fast-moving picture?
A fascinating perspective, as always. Really helps tie it all together. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into these latest developments from India. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.